Thirst and hunger systems are usually found in RPG games, but sometimes they're not that easy to create and to make them dynamic, so you don't have to create 100 classes for food, water and one to give you both. So in today's video we are going to learn how to create these systems with all the types for the food, so food, water and one that gives you both using C++. But before doing that, let me show you the final result. So in the bottom left corner you can see the water and the food, and this actor is going to give me food, the other one is going to give me water, and this one is going to give me both. And it is really dynamic because I can just go in here and go to type, and here I can set 1, 2 or 3 depending on what I want. And also here in my character, if I'm going to drag one, so let's see, blueprints, if I'm going to drag one in here, there are going to be a lot of variables that we can set. So for example, we can set drain rate, how fast we want to get food and water from the player. We can set the maximum thirst and food, so thirst, hunger, maximum thirst, maximum hunger, and food, water, drain rate. So without any further ado, let's see how we can create these systems in C++. So the first step that we have to do is to open Visual Studio or whatever you're using and go in your character class. And here in the header file we are going to create some variables. So the first thing that we have to do is to go and type out property. So U property and a pair of parentheses. So this U property is going to mark the following variable for the garbage collection. So whenever this character is going to die, the memory occupied by this variable is going to get cleaned, so we are going to have some free memory. Okay, and this variable is going to be a float, and I'm going to call this water. And also here in the parentheses we can use specifiers such as edit anywhere, and this will let us set the value of water in the editor. Then let's copy this, so we can copy the entire thing with U property as well, and then just paste it here, keep edit anywhere, and then change this to food. Let's copy once again these and paste them, and then let's call this maximum water and then the other one maximum food. Okay, so for now we are going to have 4 floats, but the other one that we are going to create now is going to be a little bit more special. So let's just type here U property once again, parentheses, no specifier this time, and then we are going to have an F timer handle. Okay, let's call it, let's give the name, and then so unused. Okay, and then let me explain why we are going to create this. So F timer handle is basically something that we have to use when using timers. So if I am going to go in Unreal Engine and then go in a blueprint class, so here inside we can get a set timer by function name, and you are going to get this big node with a return value, and if you're going to hover over it, you can see here timer handle structure, and that's basically what we are creating right here. So something that we can use to stop or create a timer or pause it or clean it. But in C++, the engine is not going to automatically create it for us, like in the blueprint system. We will have to create it ourselves. Okay, so let's name this unused handle, so we give it a better name. And then the next variable that we are going to create is going to be U property, edit anywhere, and then we can have here a float and call this food, water, drain rate. So this is going to be how fast we want to drain water and food from our character. And then let's create a function. So U function, once again, this marks the function for the garbage collection. And then we're going to have here specifiers. We can eventually put in here blueprint callable, just in case we will need to call this in blueprint. And then this is going to be a void, which means that we're not going to have any return type. And then I'm going to call this food, water, drain, or perhaps drain first. So drain, food and water. Don't forget about the parentheses at the end, and then a semicolon. Okay, but we're not done yet with this function. We will need to go and hover it and then press Alt and Enter. So press Alt and Enter and create definition of drain, food, water in your class. So here is basically the C++ file, so let's move over there. Okay, so here at the end, and what we'll have to do is to see how we can drain food and water from the character, and then also check if we want to destroy the character or not. So what we'll have to do is to get food equal to food minus 10.f. So we're going to have 10.f here because this is a float, and basically we're going to set, if we have food default value 100, we're going to set this to be 90. So every time this function is going to get called, we're going to subtract 10 from this value. And then we're going to have here water equal to water minus 20.f. We would like to increase this value to be 20 and not 10, because usually water drains faster than food. And then we want to check if food is less or equal to 0, or water is less or equal to 0. And if any of these are true, we are going to destroy the actor by calling destroy, parentheses, and a semicolon at the end. Okay, so now we basically have this function which is going to drain food and water, and if this is going to be less or equal to 0, any of these, we are going to destroy the character. And currently there is one thing that is wrong in this code, but okay, not necessarily wrong, but we need to add something else, and that is the default values for our variables that we created in here, because if we are not going to pay attention and set them in the editor, then these are going to have the value 0, and we don't want that. We want to make sure that we are going to set them even if we forget. So we are going to get here food, and we are going to set the default value to be 100. Also, I'm setting this in the constructor, usually the first thing in here. Okay, and then I'm going to set water to be once again 100, then maximum food 100 as well. So basically I'm going to put the same value for everyone, maximum water 100. Okay, and then let's set the food and water drain rate. I'm going to put this to be 2, that means 2 seconds. And now we will have to set the timer using the unused handle. So every 2 seconds we are going to drain food and water from our character. So in order to create a timer, we will need to access a custom function called getWorldTimeManager. But currently that function is not implemented in our C++ class for the character. So we will have to implement a header file for that from that file. But in order to get the address, as you can see here, so a camera component, in order to get an address like this one, we will need to go and search in the documentation for that. So let's go on Google and search here for Unreal Engine 4 Global Timer Manager, and then here for F Timer Manager Unreal Engine. Let's go in here and then go to the bottom of the page, and here you can see Runtime Engine Public Timer Manager. Make sure that you're on a header file. So we are going to copy this. Then back in our Visual Studio we are going to type include, and we are going to include this header file. Okay, and now we will need to go on event begin play, because here is where we want to set our timer, not in the constructor or event tick. So once the game starts, we want to set the timer. So as I said, get world timer manager, parentheses because it's a function, and then a dot because we want to access a function from this class, and we are going to get set timer and then parentheses, and here we will need to put in some arguments. So the first thing that we have to do is to get the unused handle that we created. So this is the F timer handle. Then we want to type here this because we want to set this timer for this class. Okay, then we want to set the function that we want to fire. So we want to have here ampersand, then a, and then the name of your class. So for me that is thirst underline hunger underline system character. Okay, and then 2 columns, and I'm going to have here drain food water, no parentheses this time because we are inside a function's arguments. Okay, and in here we will need to put the food water drain rate, so how often we want to drain the food and water, and then we have to put here true because we want to loop this function, so every 2 seconds for now, because this is the value that we set earlier, we want to call this function, and then we can put here 1.f, which means that after 1 second from the time that we set a timer, we want to first call this function, and then every 2 seconds we are going to call it again. Okay, so let's go in Unreal Engine and compile. So this might take a while. Okay, so the code just finished compiling, and now I'm going to search for thirst. Not the name of the variable, but it is going to appear faster for me here. And if I'm going to scroll down a bit, I should be able to find all the variables. Okay, so right here, thirst, hunger, system character, water 100, food 100, maximum water 100, maximum food 100, and food water generate 2, just as we set them in Visual Studio. Now let's go on and see how we can create the food class and make it give food and water to our character. In order to create a new class, you'll have to go under C++ classes in a folder or in the root one, right click, new C++ class, and choose an actor for this one. I already have mine here. And in here, in the header file and C++ file, we are going to add functionalities and components. The first thing that we will have to do is to add 2 new header files, and those are going to be uScene component and the uSphere component. Okay, so at the bottom of the page, as I said, let's copy the addresses. Okay, so include the scene component, and then we will need to include the sphere component. Also, make sure that you have no other header files after the generated.h. This should always be the last one. Okay, now let's go on and start creating components. So the first one is going to be a static mesh. So you'll have to type here U property. Once again, even this is a component, it is going to be created as a variable, and that created as a component in the C++ file. So specifiers edit anywhere, so we can edit this in the editor, and then we can have here blueprint with write, just in case we will need it later. Okay, and then we will have to get here use static mesh component. Okay, and this is going to be a pointer, and I'm going to call this static mesh. Semicolon at the end. Then once again, new property, edit anywhere. So edit anywhere, and then we can always also have blueprint with write. Then this one is going to be U sphere component. Once again, a pointer, and this one is going to be called sphere collision. Okay, then once again, U property, and this one doesn't need to have any specifiers. This one is going to be a U scene component, and I'm going to call this scene root. Don't forget about the pointer. So scene root, and semicolon at the end. Also semicolon at the end here, I forgot to put it. Okay, and now we will need to create some other functions and properties. So U property, and this one is going to be an edit anywhere, and blueprint read write. And this one is going to be an integer, and I'm going to call this type, and in parentheses I'm going to have here food, water, and both, and semicolon at the end. And perhaps the parentheses might give us some errors, but in case it does, we're just going to get rid of type and the parentheses. Okay, and then one more thing. And the last thing that we are going to create is a function. So a function, no specifiers, and this one is going to be a void. And I already have it here. The reason that I copied it is because it has all these arguments, and sometimes you can just forget about one. So this line of code is copied straight from the documentation of Unreal Engine, and this is going to be the overlap signature for our sphere collision. So just go on and search for Unreal Engine 4 C++ overlap and go on the documentation page, and you're going to find this. Just copy and paste it in here, and you should have it done. Then go on and press Alt and Enter and create declaration and definition. But it's not working, and that is because my Visual Studio is not working properly. So what we'll have to do is to see once again if this works or not. Okay, so let's try one more time. So right now I'm going to have here create definition of on overlap begin in food water actor.c++, and now we can see it in here. But let's not set it yet. First we'll need to go in the constructor and set up our set up our components for the static mesh, sphere collision, scene root, and then we're going to set the on overlap begin. Okay, so here what you'll have to do is to go on and get static mesh and get a create default subobject, then get here use static mesh component, parentheses text, one more pieces of parentheses, and then here is going to be the name of our component. I'm going to put here static mesh and then a semicolon at the end. So basically this is going to create the actual static mesh in our in the editor and then in the game as well, and this is going to be the name of the component. Then we need to go and have here sphere collision equal to create default subobject, and this one is going to be a u sphere component with the text sphere collision. Okay, semicolon at the end, and then scene root equal to create default subobject u scene component, and then the text is going to be scene root. Okay, semicolon at the end, don't forget about this. And then we are going to set the root component to be the scene root. Okay, and then we are going to attach the static mesh to the scene root, and then we are going to attach the sphere collision to the static mesh. And in order to do that, we are going to have here static mesh. So static mesh, then an arrow, set up attachment, and in parentheses root component. Then you can copy this, and instead of static mesh we can put here sphere collision, and then instead of root component static mesh. Okay, after this we can go to our sphere collision, get an arrow and set sphere radius, and we can put here by default 100.f. Might be a little bit too big, but then we can edit this in the editor, so don't worry about it. Then we can go to sphere collision once again and get b hidden in game to false, just for debugging so you can see the bounds of our sphere collision. And then in order to bind this function on overlap begin to our sphere collision, so to detect it we will need to have here sphere collision, an arrow, and then on component begin overlap dot add dynamic, and in parentheses make sure that you don't get that, and it's only add dynamic, and in parentheses this, then a comma, and then an ampersand a food underline water underline actor, and then set two columns, and then the name of our function on overlap begin, and put the parentheses and a semicolon. So basically here you'll need to specify which function you want to bind. So you'll have an ampersand a and the name of your class, and then after two columns you'll have the name of your function. Now the last thing that we have to do is to see how we can set up our on overlap begin. So what we'll have to do first thing is to go in the C++ file of our character and then get the header file at the top and then include it in the C++ file from our actor. Okay, so include this because we will need to have some references to that class and access some variables. Okay, so what we'll have to do here is to create a local variable with our character. For me that is going to be a thirst hunger system character and a pointer. I'm going to call this variable character. And in order to see if the other actor, so the one that we collided with, is equal to our character, we will need to get here a cast function. So cast, and then here we should put a class. So for me that is a thirst hunger system character, and in parentheses is the actor that we want to check for, and that is other actor. Semicolon at the end. Now in order to see if this character variable is valid or not, we will do here an if statement. So if character, just like that, we are going to do the followings. So in here what we'll have to do is to get a switch. Just press tab and let Visual Studio to give you the common syntax, and then here on switch on we should have here type and then whatever is there. But as well I think we're going to get errors because of the name that we set up for the type, so let's delete this and just have here type. And remember that this is the type of food, water, or both. So based on the value of type, we are going to have the following cases. So case 1, and this one is going to be for food, but we need to see if the character's food is less or equal to character's food minus 20, actually minus 10, so character food minus 20.f. So we want to check if this is true. We will put here a question sign, and we are going to use here a ternary, which basically a short form of an if statement. And we have like this, so we need the condition, and then we are going to have the question sign. The following things are going to be the true, if the statement is true, and then we're going to have a column, and whatever is after that is going to be the false statement. Okay, so if this is true, what we'll have to do is to get character, and then get food, and get here plus equal to 10.f. So that means that we are going to set the food to be its value plus 10. So if we would have 50, this right here would be 50 plus 10. That would mean 60. Okay, so this is for the true state. Then for the false one, a semicolon, and we are going to have character, and then get food equal to character maximum food. Okay, then we will need to have here a break. So if this case is the one for the type, we don't want to go on with the switch, so we just want to break it. Then for case 2, if the value of type is 2, we are going to get character water less or equal to character water minus 20.f. Also here not 20 for the food, but 10. These values should be true, should be the same. Okay, and then here the question sign. And so for the true state, character water plus equal to 20.f. Okay, and then a semicolon, character water equal to character maximum water. Okay, semicolon at the end, and then a break right here with a semicolon at the end once again. And now for the third case, which is the case for all of these. So if we want to give both water and food to the character, let's copy them. Okay, and then copy this one as well with the semicolons, don't forget about these. So I did not copy the entire thing. And then at the end, have a break. And I think this should be it. Here on default, you don't have to put anything. But as well, you will need to make sure that you set the type by yourself in the editor, else it won't work. And then at the end, here we are going to have a destroy function, parentheses, and a semicolon. Now let's go on and compile the code. Okay, it shouldn't take too much. So after compiling, it says that we are going to have an error. Line 19, let's see what it is. Okay, so it seems that it has to do with the set sphere radius. Let's just delete this line anyway. We don't need it. We can set the sphere radius in the editor, so there's no need for it. Let's compile now and see if there's anything wrong with the code anymore. I also set here the food. So here is type 1, type 2, and type 3. This is one is going to give food, this one water, and this one both. I also set the static mesh to be an apple, and also played with the sphere radius. By default this is 32. But now it's 12, and I also set the Z to be 6. Okay, let's play. Bottom left corner you can see water and food, and let's see if it's working or not. So it seems that it is, but there is a problem about how it is going to get added to the current value. It is always going to get resetted back to 100, and let's see where the problem is. So we should be somewhere around here. Okay, so I just noticed where the problem is here. Food should be maximum food, maximum water, and maximum food and water for this. But before replacing it here with maximum water, let me explain you why it has to be the maximum value. So let's say the water is 50, and we want to check if this is less or equal to 50 minus 20. and that is always going to be false. 50 is bigger than 30, right? And that means that we are always going to get this result right here at the end. So maximum water, let's compile, and now this should be just right. Okay, in just a second it should be done. Alright, so it's done, let's play. Now let's see if this is working properly or not. So we are going to get the food now. Okay, and now the water, and as you can see, it is indeed working. It's not going to get filled back to 100 once again. And that is pretty much everything for today's video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and if you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up. And if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date with new C++ tutorials that are going to come soon. I want to start making more of these because I see that a lot of people are using Unreal Engine for blueprints and they don't know C++ at all. But I want to be able to teach these people C++ as well, because it's such a good language to use, and it's currently the industry language that you should use along with C#. But of course there is Python and whatnot. So as I said, it's pretty much everything for today's video. If you want to get the project files, you can do that over on Patreon by supporting me for just as little as $1. And yeah, thanks for watching, and I'm going to catch you in the next one.